The hour before dawn always belonged to Tywin Lannister, a hush in which King's Landing slept, and only the restless churn of his thoughts walked the echoing corridors of the Red Keep. Tonight the city's usual stink, tar, dung, spiced wine poured from upper-floor windows, had been swept away by a wind off Blackwater Bay that carried the faint, wet metal tang of the sea. Tywin stood in the small council chamber, alone but for the flickering torches and the map of Westeros sprawled across the carved table. Pinpricks of candle grease dotted the north like pale, congealed tears. Those tears were the cost of every sunrise in which Robb Stark still called himself king. Tywin's knuckles tapped the map once, twice, before coming to rest on Winterfell's sigil. He felt the parchment wrinkle beneath his ring, the golden lion swallowing the grey direwolf whole. War had proven costly in coin and blood. A decisive stroke would do what swords had not. And so, when the chamber doors eased open, and Pycelle shuffled in with a note bearing Sansa Stark's latest embroidery pattern for Queen Cersei, Tywin's reply was curt. "Silk is well and good, Grand Maester. Wool binds warmer. Wool, marriage, peace." 3 words, and the old man bowed himself backward, dazed by what he did not yet understand. Bronze bells in Baelor's sept pealed the first light over city spires, as Sansa Stark, draped in a modest dove-gray gown, knelt before a looking-glass in Maegor's holdfast. The reflection staring back seemed older than her 15 years, its blue eyes gone glassy from months of witnessing other people's victories. She drew the brush through her auburn hair, counting silent heartbeats, telling herself she still had secrets no one could wrest away. Secrets of snow-covered courtyards and the smell of hot bread in Winterfell's kitchens. Yet even those memories felt rented, payable to fate. A knock rapped once, Sir Meryn's iron gauntlet, and the door opened. Queen Cersei stepped inside, perfumed with crimson joy. "My father requests your presence," she said, voice a soft dagger. Sansa rose, gown pooling at her feet like surrendered banners. Down spiral stairs they went, through archways guarded by men who never smiled, until they reached the council chamber where Tywin waited, still as a statue that had studied all the ages of man, and found them wanting. Tywin gestured to the seat beside him. Cersei lingered at the door, lips curling just enough to hint she knew 20 things Sansa never would. When she departed, shutting the heavy oak behind her, the room swallowed the noise until the lonely hiss of torches hummed in its place. Tywin spoke without preamble. "Lady Sansa, the realm stands on a precipice. I intend to pull it back." His eyes were molten coin, valuable, unforgiving. "Your brother's banners have proved stubborn. Yet I believe the North longs for restful fields more than for songs of wolf kings." Sansa clasped trembling fingers on her lap. She had learned not to trust pretty words. But these were not pretty. They were practical, heavy, inevitable. "I propose a union," he continued, "between House Lannister and House Stark, between you and me." The sentence seemed to cling in the torchlit air like twilight mist. At first, Sansa's mind produced only splintered protests. Tywin was old enough to be her grandsire. Tywin was the lion who devoured her father. Tywin was everything Winterfell feared in southern courts. Yet beneath each thought lay another she dared not admit. Robb needed breathing room. The North bled under blockades, and the gods had remained stubbornly silent. Silence lingered so long that Tywin, who abhorred wasted minutes, finally broke it. "I will not demand an answer now. But if you accept, you will become the Lady of Casterly Rock, your children heirs to a peace no sword could fracture. Imagine the larders of the North filled, its keeps unburned, your brother freed to rule without Lannister steel at his throat." He passed her a folded parchment pressed with his seal. "Read this when alone." Sansa stood on trembling legs. Her courtesy curtsy was practiced perfection, yet when she lifted her head, Tywin saw a daughter of Lord Eddard, unbowed despite the court's cruelties. She turned to leave. At the threshold she paused, as though some whisper drifted through the cracks of history, and told her this was where the story bent like hot metal. She did not glance back. That night in her chamber, Sansa broke the seal. Inside lay a single sheet, ink neat and spare, assurances of Winterfell's autonomy, of hostages returned, of northern lords' pardons, of a dowry so vast it could rebuild every torched village from the Twins to Deepwood Motte. One line, underlined in crimson, read simply, "We end this war together or watch our small folk starve apart." A tear darkened the parchment, followed by another, until ink bled into washed gray. Sansa folded the missive against her heart and looked through the arrow slit toward the tower of the Sept. Bells tolled again, as if answering questions she had not yet asked. Word of Tywin's proposal rode secret on raven wings to the camps of the Westerlands and the Reach. Lords weighed the lion's audacity against the wolf's value. Kevin Lannister, stirring embers in the charred firepot outside his tent, read the cipher from his brother and stroked his beard. "He means to put the North in a golden cage," he murmured. Beside him, his son Lancel winced at the imagined cold of those bars. In Old Town, Mace Tyrell smirked around a mouthful of honeyed ham when the message reached him. "Let lions bed wolves if they will," he belched. "High Garden needs only bloom." Yet elsewhere, the notion sparked unease. In Riverrun, at the Twins, on the Iron Isles where Salt's stiff hair bristled at the thought of a Lannister tightening grip on more coasts. Still, none would move until Robb Stark answered. Robb sat in the canvas command tent outside Seaguard. Gray wind curled like living shadow at his heel. When the Raven arrived, Maester Vyman read the words aloud, voice quivering. The tent's gloom seemed to contract around each syllable. Tywin. Marriage. Sansa. Robb's fist slammed the map table, cups rattling. Catelyn, hands trembling, lifted them in prayer to a mother's absent gods. Yet even she saw the stark arithmetic. Sansa's sacrifice against thousands more graves unfilled. Robb dismissed his advisors and paced until dawn turned the river mist gold. War had taught him that victories were sometimes agreements unthinkable months before. He dipped quill in ink, paused, then wrote. "The North remembers. The North also endures. Let us see your terms." Terms arrived on heavy parchment, borne by Sir Adam Marbrand, who rode through Lannister lines, then Stark, wrapped in truces as fragile as cobwebs. Within the Stark Council, arguments flared. Rickard Karstark shouted of vengeance. The Great John thundered of pride, while Catelyn wept silent tears upon hearing of hostages freed. In the end, Robb sent word. He would parley on neutral ground at Moat Cailin. Temporary ceasefire. No hostilities within 50 leagues. Each ruler bringing only personal guards. Tywin sent his yes before the Raven's wings were dry. In King's Landing, preparations accelerated like a siege turned inward. Cersei hissed that the match was grotesque. Tyrion laughed that it was brilliant. Jaime watched his father with a swordsman's eye, searching for the opening move hidden within the obvious one. "You mean to place a Stark at your table," Jaime said, "but she'll bring winter with her." Tywin fastened the crimson wool cloak around his shoulders. "Winter can be melted," he answered, "if you know where to apply the heat." He strode past, armor gleaming in torchlight, leaving Jaime with a question whose edges he dared not test. The convoy northward left the capital under banners half furled, as though secrecy might soften their brilliant scarlet. Along the King's Road peasants stared, confused by seeing the Lion March without roar. Sansa rode in the gilded wheelhouse, hands folded, her gaze slipping between slats at autumn fields ablaze with color. Each mile carried her farther from the gardens where she had bled innocence, and closer to a fate her hands had not sown. Yet with each league she whispered the same vow. "To keep my people safe, I shall master my fear." One evening, as the sun dipped behind towering oaks, Tywin himself dismounted and approached her carriage. "Walk with me," he said, offering his arm. She took it. They strolled among red leaves drifting like embers. "You fear me," he observed. "I fear many things," she replied, "but I do not let fear drive my steps." Tywin inclined his head in approval. A fitting quality for a lady of Casterly Rock. Leaves crackled underfoot like distant applause. Moat Cailin loomed from the marshes, its black stone towers broken yet unyielding. A fortress that remembered ages when first men sang to nameless gods. In this desolate hall, lit by braziers whose smoke threaded through crumbled ceiling, Robb Stark faced Tywin Lannister across a narrow table. Sansa stood at Tywin's right, eyes fixed on her brother with such longing that Robb's heart clenched. Behind him towered the Greatjon, Lord Bolton, Galbart Glover. Behind Tywin, Sir Kevan Pycelle, and a dozen gold-cloaked guards unmoving as armor stands. No blades were drawn, yet every word felt honed enough to sever kingdoms. Tywin set forth the treaty. Recognition of northern independence under Stark rule, restoration of the Riverlands to their traditional lords, withdrawal of Lannister forces beyond the Neck, the immediate severing of Joffrey's claim to Sansa. In return, Sansa's marriage to him would create an eternal pact of mutual defense. Lannister gold would finance the North's post-war rebuilding. A yearly tribute of timber and furs would flow south. And a single heir born of lion and wolf would inherit Casterly Rock, but swear fealty to Winterfell in perpetuity. Robb weighed parchment that smelled faintly of Tywin's signet wax and bloodless ambition. Silence expanded until Bolton coughed like a raven clearing fog. Robb lifted his eyes to Sansa, and in them she saw her own childhood racing through snowdrifts. He found his voice. "If my sister consents, the North will accept." Tywin turned to her, waiting. She stepped forward, the silence now hers to break. "I consent," she said, "for the sake of peace, for the people who cannot lift sword nor shield. Let our houses share more than graves." Tywin bowed, brief, calculated, yet genuine in its gravity, and placed his hand over hers. A ripple moved through assembled lords, half relief, half dread. When the parchment was signed and sealed, Tywin summoned his steward to draft proclamations for every holdfast. Robb and Sansa spoke privately in a ruined tower bathed by mossy light. He grasped her hands, calloused and small inside his. "I would bear this burden for you," he said, voice cracked. "But the realm demands it of you instead." She pressed her forehead to his. "It demands nothing we cannot shape," she replied. Gray wind nosed her palm, as if offering wolfish vows of protection. When she rode south again, she carried a carved wooden wolf Robb slipped into her hand, the very one she once gave him on a winter's morning, when snow laced her lashes. Token returned, promise reforged. The wedding was set for the first day of winter. Less than 2 moons upon return to King's Landing, as the royal smiths recut an heirloom Lannister ring to fit her slender finger, whispers darted through court like mice. The Hand himself weds the hostage. The lion tires of war and seeks the wolf to guard his sleep. In the Sept of Baelor, High Septon pondered scripture for precedents. None existed. Yet coin filled the offering box, and so precedents bent. Sansa spent her days learning the subtleties of Casterly Rock from Lady Faylis Stokeworth, summoned for the task. Mines vined the mountainside. Halls wound like labyrinths, and a cliffside garden clung to salty winds where bright red roses grew wild. Sansa recited these details each dusk, memorizing them as though they were verses to calm her heart. Tywin, meanwhile, orchestrated the post-war settlement with quills sharper than Valyrian steel. He pledged fresh garrisons to hold the Riverlands against Ironborn raiders, dispatched wagons of grain north before snows closed the passes, and commanded masons to rebuild all bridges destroyed by war, bridges that would bear wolf banners beside lion. Everywhere ink replaced blood, yet not all hearts turned so fluidly. Cersei, seated before her mirror, shattered a crystal decanter when she learned her father meant to sire fresh heirs. "He thinks to erase my golden children," she snarled. Jaime cleaned the glass shards from her lap. "He thinks to secure them," he answered gently. Tyrion, for his part, raised a cup of arbor gold to the Union and muttered, "A pity I cannot bet on this at the dwarfs' cockfights. Odds would be interesting." Varys crept through hidden passages, listening. "Even lions age," he whispered to himself, "yet they roar until their last breath." On the eve of the ceremony, Tywin visited Sansa's chambers alone, against every custom of propriety. He dismissed her maids with a glance. Standing before the fire, he removed his lion-headed brooch and set it on the mantel. Tomorrow will change many lives, he said. I will not pretend you have chosen this path free of chains. But I swear by the bones of Casterly Rock that no man shall harm you while I draw breath. He drew from his cloak a slender dagger, its pommel a small ruby. This blade belonged to Joanna. She carried it concealed when she traveled. Sansa accepted it, weight light yet resolute. A gift so you need never feel powerless again. Their eyes met, hers shimmering with unshed tears, his unreadable, perhaps stirring with memories of a wife lost. He turned, clasped his brooch, and left without another word. Morning bells rang slower than usual, as though reluctant to wake a city facing new order. In the sept, towering columns of pale marble reflected gold sunlight pouring through stained glass lion. Tywin wore crimson silk trimmed with black sable. Sansa wore ivory damask embroidered with silver leaves, each thread glinting as she moved. The High Septon intoned the vows while courtiers murmured about omens, lion and wolf, sun and snow. When Tywin slid the cut gold ring onto her finger, Sansa's breath caught, not from fear but from the hush that fell across hundreds of noble throats. Peace, for a heartbeat, felt tangible as silk. Feast followed in the throne room, tables burdened with honeyed hair, lemon cakes towering, and rivers of arbor vintage. Yet Tywin limited the toasts to 1 hour, then excused the couple. As they departed through the Hall of Faces, crowds parted, some kneeling, some staring as though a comet streaked overhead. In their wake a hush trailed, a sense that something enormous had shifted beneath the realm's feet. Inside their newly sanctified suite, torches glowed warm against lion-pelt rugs. Tywin dismissed attendants, turning the key in the heavy door. A fire crackled, casting red ribbons over stone. For a moment they stood, bride and groom, strangers bound by necessity and design. Tywin lifted her hand, brushing his lips against knuckles marked by quill callus rather than sword scar. You shall not be alone, he said, voice quieter than any had heard. Sansa, recalling the dagger beneath her pillow, answered, Nor shall you. He allowed himself the faintest curve of a smile. Outside, King's Landing roared with music, but within, two unlikely architects drafted the blueprint for a newfound kingdom. And while bells claimed the city's night, Sansa Stark, now Lady Lannister, looked through the casement at pinpricks of light across the sprawling capital. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon lay Winterfell, her heart's compass, yet here beside her stood the realm's most austere ruler. A man wielding marriage where others wielded sword. She did not know whether history would bless or curse their names, only that the moment tasted of both steel and snow. She breathed it in, straightened her shoulders, and prepared to write the next line of their story, with ink no war could spill. Ni. Winter seeped through the shutters of the royal apartments, but the fire at their hearth roared bright enough to chase the chill into corners. It was the first dawn of a marriage spoken of like a riddle, and though Sansa had slept little, the sleeplessness felt different from the raw fear that had plagued her nights for more than a year. She lay listening to the tick and hiss of oak on flame, surprised by the steady cadence of Tywin's breathing beside her. She had expected silence, had braced for the lion's cold reserve. Instead the sound was ordinary, almost comforting, like a father's slumber heard through childhood walls. She slipped from the bed, gathered the ruby-hilted dagger from beneath her pillow, and padded barefoot to the window's ledge. Fog hung over the city. In that hazy pall, rooftops resembled the backs of slumbering beasts, tails of chimney smoke drifting upward as if the monsters dreamed of flight. Sansa pressed the blade's flat side to the glass, watching the steel cloud with moisture, proof that warmth could leave even the sharpest edge. Behind her, the mattress shifted. Tywin sat, tunic already donned, hair combed back with military precision. He examined her posture, the dagger in her hand, and lifted an eyebrow. The blade suits you, he said, but your feet will freeze. Without waiting he rose, draped a sable-lined cloak across her shoulders, and stood beside her. They watched fog peel away from the Blackwater like a curtain taking final bow. Today, he said, we meet the Guildmasters. A treaty is parchment until it feeds mouths. She nodded. The cloak smelled faintly of cedar. Its weight was heavy, protective. And afterward, she asked. "We ride for the rock," he answered, voice softer than stone deserved. "I've been absent too long." She turned to face him, and for a heartbeat she forgot the gulf of years and blood. In its place lingered a possibility she could not yet name. Word of the wedding's consummation spread by mid-morning, confirmed by linen sheets displayed from the sept steps with fanfare, both macabre and devout. Scribes scratched proclamations, and red cloaks marched restored confidence through cobbled alleys. The small folk whispered of a northern she-wolf who tamed a lion. Others spoke of a lion with claws too clever to unsheath. Regardless, bakeries doubled their bread allotments with Lannister coin, and fruit sellers found unexpected buyers among the gold cloaks, tasked with distributing relief. Peace, expensive as rubies in a drought, glimmered for the first time since the first Deerwolf banner had crossed the Twins. The Hall of Guilds lay off the Street of Silk, a domed marvel gilded in green and bronze. Within, Tywin addressed smiths, masons, and scribes beneath statues of their patron saints. Sansa watched from a dais draped in Lannister crimson. If her hands trembled, she masked it by straightening scrolls. Tywin's voice cut the air, calm, certain, not a syllable wasted. He promised tax remissions on northern wagons, laden with grain, fixed prices for winter coal, a rebuilding fund administered jointly by Rock and Stark accountants. In return, he demanded loyalty to the crown and strict price gouging penalties. The guildmasters, used to royal promises that unraveled quicker than straw in a storm, found themselves nodding before they realized the habit. Tywin seldom negotiated. He declared realities. When the session adjourned, he guided Sansa toward the crowd of merchants pressing forward. "Lady Lannister," Tywin introduced, letting the title settle like new alloy cooling. "She will oversee the grain convoys. Send all reports to her steward." Sansa blinked, caught between pride and panic, but recovered with a graceful dip of her chin. The merchants bowed, and in that bow she saw the first thread of power she could shape. One not stolen but bestowed, because she had proven the resolve to grasp it. Ravens traced arcs across the narrow sea of winter sky, their shadows flickering over the Red Keep's courtyard as the traveling party assembled. Wagons bore chests of accounts and a trove of Lannister ledgers. Horses snorted steam. Guards tightened saddle straps with the deference of men who understood the realm's fortunes rode in these saddlebags. Jaime approached, helm beneath elbow. "Father," he said, "your route takes you past the Antlers. Stormlander holdfasts may harbor Catelyn's sympathizers." Tywin adjusted a buckle on his gauntlet. "A sympathy without teeth," he answered. "Still, you and 50 guards will ride ahead. Clear the path." Jaime inclined his head. To Sansa he offered a tentative smile. Like a swordsman saluting a dance partner, he has been warned never to underestimate. "If the north winds bite, Lady Lannister, remind my father he owns a cloak." She managed a small laugh, surprising them both. They departed amid drums and cheers, though Sansa noted, in alleys beyond view of banners, the wary eyes of small folk, unaccustomed to processions lacking captive heads. The convoy wound up the King's Road, leaving King's Landing to its restless peace. Over days, winter's breath grew sharper, stripping leaves from oaks, until branches scratched the sky like quills on parchment. At night, they camped beneath silk canopies. Tywin shared a war map by firelight, tracing with gloved finger the roads into the Riverlands, where Lannister levies would withdraw under his decree. Sansa studied each line. "If the Freys chafe," she said, daring counsel, "offer them river tolls in lieu of hostages. They care more for coin than glory." Tywin considered, brow narrowing. "You have the right of it," he said. "Lord Walder's loyalty is measured in purses." He wrote swiftly on a small scrap of parchment, sealed it, and handed it to a courier bound for the Twins. Only after the rider vanished into darkness did he regard her again. "You think like a Lannister," he said. "I think like a Stark who has lost too many kin to arrogance," she corrected. He accepted the rebuke with a nod, as though adding a bar of iron to a sword he thought already temperless. On the 7th night, campfires flickered against silhouettes of watchtowers half collapsed along the Blackwater rush. Sansa walked the riverbank, wool skirts brushing frost-stiff reeds. A splash nearby, she turned. Dagger poised. Tyrion Lannister emerged from behind a willow, hands raised in theatrical surrender. "Hoping I might steal a kiss, sweet sister by-law?" he quipped, then grimaced under her glare. "I jest. I came to drink where wine tastes of river." He produced a small cask. She should have fled. Instead, she found herself sitting on a fallen log, the dagger across her lap. Tyrion filled 2 cups. "I know something of marriages forged in iron," he said, swirling the liquid. "My own nearly drowned me in a quartz pity." Sansa remembered the day she was forced to kneel beside him and felt the old sting. Yet he was no longer her unwanted groom. He was now kin by a twist stranger than Mummer's farce. "Do you trust him?" she asked quietly. Tyrion looked toward the tents where Tywin's command pavilion loomed. "With the realm, yes. With hearts." He tipped his cup. "He values them slightly less than gold. Slightly more than weak men. You are neither." She sipped, warmth blooming through her chest. When Tyrion rose to depart, he bowed deeply. A toast, then, to wolves who wear lion's teeth and bite only when welcome. She watched him disappear into darkness, and wondered if Lannisters were born knowing riddles of weakness and strength, or if they learned by surviving one another. At Casterly Rock, miners paused at the clamor of horns announcing their lord's return. The fortress jutted from a cliff like a lion's skull carved by ancient gods, arches of pale stone gleaming under sun. As Sansa's carriage clattered through the Lion's Mouth gate, she glimpsed the famed descent of terraces that spiraled downward toward the sea. Legends claimed dragons once nested in the bowels, but only gold flowed now. Molten promise of power's permanence. Courtiers assembled in the great hall, their crimson brooches reflecting torchlight as though each chest caught fire. Tywin introduced Sansa to Lord Martin Lannister, stewards, castellans, Septus trained to run vast kitchens where flour arrived by the wagonload from the Reach. She greeted each with composed courtesy, but inside her heartbeat thudded. She had expected menace in the rock. Instead, she inhaled cedar and salt and something older, ambition fossilized into marble stairs polished by centuries of Lannister heels. That night, a private supper unfolded in a high-windowed solar overlooking the sunset sea. Tywin dismissed servants after the first course, preferring their own company to the constant clink of silver. He poured 2 goblets from a decanter cut with the twin lions of Andal antiquity. "You will find the rock a crucible," he said. "Not unlike court, but quieter." She tasted the wine, crisp, laced with pear. Unexpected gentleness. "I intend to learn its every corridor," she replied. "Knowledge is armor." Tywin leaned forward, torch glow painting lines of his face with bronze. "Then begin tomorrow. I will tour the mines. You shall accompany me." She had never seen a gold vein or the sweat-slick tunnels where pickaxes rang like cathedral bells. Curiosity overrode fatigue. She agreed. They descended at dawn, torches illuminating cut passageways where veins of quartz glinted amid duller rock. Miners paused to salute. Tywin conversed with foremen in the clip dialect of production. Tonnage, yield, water seep, safety supports. Sansa noted how he spotted a cracked timber beam and ordered immediate reinforcement, how he questioned a smelter's fuel costs, with mental arithmetic quicker than the steward's ledger. In a tunnel farthest from daylight, Tywin halted. "This seam was discovered months before Robert's rebellion," he said over the distant clang of chisels. "My father would not expand it, fearing expense. I ordered excavation the day I inherited the title. 10,000 crowns of gold have since been forged into swords, city walls, grain stores, risk and reward." He faced her. "Rule does not mean comfort, it means calculation." She met his gaze unflinching. "Then let us calculate the lives saved by risk, not crowns earned." For a heartbeat he weighed her, then nodded once, deep as any bow. Spring's promise thawed the north while snow still dusted the rock's parapets. Ravens carried Tywin's edicts. Riverland prisoners released. Winter grain caravans to depart from Lannisport before the equinox. Lord Bolton named Warden of the North in Robb's absence, but subject to monthly audits by Lady Lannister's stewards. Roose Bolton's reply arrived scented with chill restraint, its phrasing courteous yet coiled. "He will test the chain," Tywin mused, biting until he finds a weak link. Sansa remembered tales of flayed men and shivered. "Then we do not give him one," she said, summoning steel into her words. Tywin drafted instructions that same night, dispatching seasoned Westerman administrators to Winterfell as advisors. Their hidden mandate: record every supply ledger, every whisper, every hidden dagger. Days merged into pattern. Mornings spent in council chambers where Sansa learned the cost of dredging Lannisport's harbor silt. Afternoons in the Rock's library among dusty tomes on trade law. Evenings riding the cliff paths where gulls shrieked like wayward ghosts. On one such ride, she found Tywin waiting at an overlook where waves threw white lace against granite fangs. "Ravens from the north," he said, handing her parchment. She read Robb's sigil, broken wax. The letter spoke of re-garrisoned castles, of bannermen pacified by grain shipments, of rumors that Balon Greyjoy tested northern coasts. Robb requested ships to guard White Harbor. Sansa held the page, seeking Tywin's eyes. "Will we send them?" He answered with another letter, his sealed and ready. 20 longships, he said, commanded by experienced captains, manned with crews who know how to fight in the dark of winter seas. Surprise flickered across her face. Why so generous? He clasped his hands behind his back. "Because Greyjoys sow chaos, and chaos devours prophets. Because your brother will remember who granted him strength in unguarded moments. And because peace purchased cheaply is discarded easily." The wind whipped her hair across her lips. She tucked strands behind her ear and understood the full arithmetic of that generosity. Tywin's 69th name day approached. Sansa proposed a modest feast, but the Rock's court insisted on grandeur. Minstrels from Bravos, dancers from Lys, a boar stuffed with quail stuffed with figs, layers of extravagance echoing the Lord's layered ambitions. Sansa oversaw preparations, recalling Gran's lessons on Winterfell harvest feasts. She ordered extra trenchers for servants, insisted miners be invited to the keep's secondary hall, arranged for orphans of Lannisport, victims of war or plague, to receive new cloaks fashioned from leftover crimson wool. Word reached Tywin. He found her amid storerooms measuring bolts of fabric. "You shame my stewards," he said. Yet his tone bore no rebuke. "Your miners will drink better for it," she replied. He stared at her a moment, then left without further comment, though the following day new coin appeared in the orphanage's coffers. The celebration filled halls with music that clattered off vaulted ceilings like flurries of bells. Sansa wore a gown of pale blue edged in red lion paws. Tywin, in black and crimson doublet, greeted each guest with cool courtesy. When the high table filled, Sansa rose to toast. She spoke of stone shaped by steady hands, of gold unearthed by courage, of peace forged by those who dared imagine wars might end without swords unsheathed. Her words flowed like snowmelt, neither meek nor boastful. Tywin's gaze fixed upon her as though discovering an unexpected vein of ore. When applause thundered, he lifted his goblet. "To Lady Lannister," he declared, voice carrying through thronged galleries. The hall echoed the name, some with zeal, others with caution. But echo it did. Sansa felt the vibration in her ribcage like the hum of a ringing blade struck true. Later, in the quiet of moonlit corridors, they walked unescorted, footsteps muffled by carpet. An alcove held the statue of a lioness guarding 3 cubs. Tywin paused, fingertips brushing cold marble. "Joanna chose this piece," he said, surprise in his own admission. She believed cubs must see strength embodied. Sansa looked from the lioness to him. "Your strength is carved everywhere here," she said softly. "Yet you carve still." He turned toward her, the torch casting half his face in shadow. "Stone erodes. One must shape anew or watch it crumble." She stepped closer, emboldened. "Then let us shape together." He hesitated, a heartbeat's flicker of vulnerability, then placed his hand over hers upon the statue's base. The marble felt chill, but his palm radiated heat, steady as a forge. Across the realm that forges sparks flew. In River Run, Edmure Tully received Lannister emissaries bearing terms for compensation of river damage. In the Reach, Marguerite Tyrell learned of trade contracts granting Highgarden first bid on northern wool shipments if prices held fair. In the Vale, Lord Royce reported that Littlefinger's talons seemed unsettlingly clipped, his crown income halved by new audits traced back to Casterly Rock. Even in Dorne, Princess Arianne read the missive guaranteeing Dornish caravans safe passage through the Riverlands. And though the Southron sun bred suspicion, she noted the sudden steadiness of goods flowing up the Greenblood. Each letter closed with the same signature, Tywin of House Lannister, and beneath it, countersigned in precise script, Sansa of House Stark, Lady of Casterly Rock. Her quill joined his, making each promise half hers. But not all quills scribbled concord. In the dread hall of the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton lifted a raven's note, describing Lannister stewards auditing northern levies. He read, silent as falling ash. "My lord?" his bastard son Ramsay asked, flaying knife glistening with oil. "Shall I hunt these southerners?" Roose's pale eyes reflected candlelight like ice under moon. "Not yet," he murmured. "A lioness has bitten the lion's throat from within. We wait. Patient skinning yields cleaner hides." Far to the east, Balon Greyjoy cursed the sudden appearance of Lannister-manned longships at Deepwood Mott's coast. His daughter Yara spat salt and vowed to test the lion's claws where water washed them dull. And in King's Landing, Cersei entertained suitors at gaudy feasts, while her spies whispered of a bride inspiring miners and merchants alike. She drank Arbor Red until bitterness dulled, then shattered a goblet against a column, shards scattering like ruby stars. Yet the most dangerous adversary called none of these halls home. In a stone cell beneath the Red Keep, Lord Varys unfolded tidings beneath the glow of a single candle. Whispers of a sellsword company, east of Pentos, newly enriched by Lannister coin. Rumors that the king, young Tommen, gentle and entrusting, was to be wed to a Valyrian maiden known only by code name Silverfire, her dowry bankroll. Threads wove into patterns too intricate for comfort. Varys dipped quill, wrote a single line, and sent the letter on wings swifter than secrets. The realm stands upon a precipice of golden promise and hidden shadows. He signed with a spider's symbol, then blew out the candle, leaving darkness to weigh the words. Unaware of webs spun in far corners, Sansa oversaw her first northern convoy loading at Lannisport. She walked the docks where gulls screamed overhead, checked manifests of salt pork, dried apples, arbor barrels. A burly dockhand, sunburned and scarred, presented a bundle of parchments. "Cargo waits, milady," signed by Master Brog. She thanked him, then noticed his chill-reddened fingers. She slipped him a small leather purse from her sleeve. "For gloves," she said. He stared, astonished. "Milady, I..." Words failed, replaced by a clumsy bow. News of her kindness traveled faster than any raven. That evening, Tywin joined her at the dock's edge. Sunset painted the sea, molten brass. "You give coin freely," he observed. She watched a gull dive for fish. Cold hands drop crates. "A silver stag is cheaper than a broken barrel of grain." He looked at her, eyes considering. "You measure cost and yield more quickly than most lords." She smiled faintly. "Your minds taught me." For a moment they stood as equals, silhouettes carved against forging light. A west wind carried spray that dusted their cheeks. She licked salt from her lips, tasted a future both briny and bright. Winter's first storm thundered down the coast as the convoy sailed. In chambers high above the cliff, Sansa marked time by sleet, hammering shutters. A raven delivered Robb's seal. "The Ironborn fleet repelled, Deepwood Mott secure, thanks to your ships. Tell the lion the wolves remember." She held the parchment close, letting relief warm her. When Tywin entered, snow melting on his cloak, she handed him the letter without preamble. He read, folded it, tucked it inside his jerkin. "The North's gratitude," he said. "A coin more valuable than gold." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever fear generosity could be mistaken for weakness?" He unfastened his cloak. laid it over a chair. Only by fools. And fools are handled, not feared. She wondered if he included Bolton among those fools, or if greater caution cloaked that particular name. Nights grew longer, days thinner as if the sun rationed itself. Sansa spent candlelit hours with Maester Crelin studying old Westerland's charters. One brittle scroll revealed marriage ties between early Lannisters and first men of the North, predating Andal invasion. Fascinated, she traced faded runes. If such alliances existed, perhaps we follow tradition, not defy it, she mused. Tywin appeared at the library's threshold. History is a ledger, he remarked. Most pages lost to fire or convenience. Yet here you uncover a precedent, display it. Lords fear what is new. They bow to what is old. She arranged for the scroll to be exhibited in the Rock's gallery, along with stark wolf banners hung beside lions. Courtiers gaped, but many knelt, seeing inevitability rather than anomaly. The first moon of the new year waxed silver when Maester Crelin confirmed what Tywin suspected, but spoke only in the privacy of their chambers. Sansa carried a child. She sat on a cushioned window bench, overlooking torchlit courtyards, limbs trembling in disbelief and awe. Tywin approached, set a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You are strong," he said. "The babe will be." A million unspoken fears crowded her throat. Would the realm view this child as peace's emblem or pawn? Would Cersei strike? Would Bolton revolt? Yet when Tywin knelt, taking both her hands, she saw none of the cold calculation that defined him before. In its place glimmered something akin to wonder, fierce and fragile. "Our line endures," he murmured. "Through lion and wolf." She rested her palm on his cheek. "Then let us guard it together." Their foreheads touched, and the fire's quiet roar filled the silence. Months unfolded, with the deliberate grace of chessmen sliding to positions long foreseen. Casterly Rock bustled with midwives, smiths forging tiny cradles, inlaid with both sigils, heralds drafting edicts of succession, designed to silence any claim by disgruntled cousins. Tyrion arrived bearing books of Dornish nursery songs, a sardonic gift that coaxed laughter from Sansa despite morning sickness. Jaime drilled new guards, instructing them in defense against infiltrators, rumored to test the Rock's seaward tunnels. Cersei remained in King's Landing, her letters a mingle of strained congratulations and veiled barbs. "May your union prove as fruitful as rumor claims." Each line dripped sweet venom. Tywin dictated courteous replies, revealing nothing, yet dispatched 2 more spies to the capital. Meanwhile, Sansa corresponded with her mother at River Run. Letters full of cautious joy. Catelyn wrote back of hope, blooming like spring crocus along the Trident's banks. Far away, on the island of Pike, plans brewed to strike Lannisport while its lord's attention lay inland. Balon Greyjoy rallied reavers, only to find spies had warned the Rock in time. Lannisport's harbor suddenly bristled with scorpions and armored ships under Sir Jaime's command. The Ironborn raid floundered, scattering like crabs before gulls, and rumors spread that ghosts of old King Lan, the clever, guarded those waters. Within halls of Pike, Balon's fury cracked oaken tables. Yet his defeat served Tywin's quiet design. Each failed raid strengthened the illusion of impregnable unity. Inside the Rock's upper levels, Sansa felt the child stir for the first time on a windy night, when the moon door shutters rattled. She clutched her belly, gasping at the flutter. Tywin, roused from parchment review, crossed the room swiftly. She guided his hand to the ripple beneath silk. He stood still, jaw tightening. "A strong kick," he muttered, though his eyes shone. She smiled, feeling suddenly certain this child would bind 2 worlds. "A wolf cub," she whispered. "And lion-clawed," he added. They shared quiet laughter that tasted of steel softened by velvet. As birth approached, Robb sent Lady Mage Mormont south with a retinue of fierce shield maidens, escorting plows and seeds purchased by Lannister gold to restore war-carved fields. They arrived roaring bear chants through Casterly Rock's gate, startling delicate courtiers. Sansa greeted them in the courtyard, cloak billowing about her swollen belly. Mage knelt, fist pounding breast. "For the lady who spared the North another grave," she boomed. Sansa pulled her up, embracing her amid gasps of the assembled. Tywin watched from a balcony. He saw loyalty forged by gestures gold could not mint. Labor began on a storm-lashed night when thunder boomed like stone giants wrestling. Tywin dismissed all but experienced midwives and Septa Mordain, recalled from her enforced seclusion. Hours ground like millstones. Sansa gripped a linen strip, sweat and tears mingling. Mind-chasing memory of Winterfell's godswood, black pools stirring under weirwood branches. She whispered the old words to herself. At last, a cry pierced the thunder. A boy, red-cheeked, yelling outrage at heir. Tywin entered, armor discarded, eyes fever-bright. The midwife laid the newborn in his arms, and Tywin, who once commanded legions without tremor, trembled. He knelt beside Sansa, lowering the babe to her chest. "Our son," he said, voice raw. She touched the tiny downy head. "Bernard," she murmured, choosing a name that bridged both lineages. Tywin nodded, tears caught in the lines beside his nose, a map re-inked by emotion. Dawn broke mild, rain-washed. Bells tolled across the rock, their peals swallowed by cliffs, then flung to sea where gulls shrieked applause. Messengers galloped. To Winterfell proclaiming a grandson to the north. To King's Landing announcing an heir to Casterly Rock, to River Run, Old Town, even Sunspear. The realm woke to a new name. Bernard Lannister, son of Tywin and Sansa, Lion Wolf of two houses. Songs sprouted in taverns, some bawdy, some reverent telling of a bond that yoked winter and gold. In chambers heavy with fragrance of herbs, Sansa rested, eyes half closed while the child nursed. Tywin sat nearby, letters forgotten. "When he is of age," she said, stroking Bernard's cheek, "he will need the North's chill and the rock's sun." Tywin considered. "He will have both. We shall travel to Winterfell come spring thaw. The lords must see him." She smiled, imagining white wolves prowling godswood shadows. Hell learned to track at 5, to count coin at 6. Tywin's lips curved. And to read treatises on seacraft at 7. They shared a glance, conspirators in shaping destiny. Beyond their contentment, wheels turned ever still. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell fumed that new Lannister-Stark accords threatened his grain monopolies. In the East, sellsword captains tallied contracts drawn with Casterly ink. In the shadows of King's Landing, Varys watched recruits of a nascent city watch, loyal to Lady Lannister's reforms. Yet for that winter's span, peace blanketed the land like fresh snow. Clean, silent, hiding scars while stilling restless blades. One evening, as Sansa walked the gallery cradling Bernard, she paused before a tapestry newly hung. Wolf and lion entwined beneath a tree of red leaves. She traced the threads, marveling at how fabric could hold hope sharper than any oath. Tywin joined her, resting a finger on the stitched trunk. "Look sturdy," he said. She turned, leaning against him, the child asleep between. "Sturdy trees weather storms," she whispered. He pressed a kiss to her temple, a gesture unseen by servants, but witnessed by moonlight streaming through high windows. From afar, Robb Stark stood on Winterfell's battlements, gray wind at his side, and stared north where auroras shimmered. He held Sansa's latest letter describing his nephew's laugh like chimes. "Peace holds," he murmured. Gray wind howled softly, not a challenge but an answer. In the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton watched flurries swirl beyond arrow slits and wondered if ice might dull even the lion's ambition. In King's Landing, Cersei poured wine into a goblet too full, staring at the surface as if it might reflect a future she refused. But for the moment, future waited. In a fortress carved from western cliffs, beneath banners merged in crimson and gray, a lion lay beside a wolf while their cub slept in a cradle of dark wood and gold. Fires crackled, waves pounded distant rocks, and the realm, battered, weary, drew a tentative breath, unsure if the quiet heralded dawn or merely the hush before the next roll of thunder. Yet inside those chambers, two souls who once stood on opposite edges of ambition held hands across the cradle, and in their shared silence flickered something rarer than gold, older than oaths, the fragile stubborn light of hope. Inaho, Ibisal. Distant thunder cracked beyond the sunset sea, a groan of titans settling in the deep, while dusk washed Casterly Rock in molten oranges. The sound echoed through high galleries where torches lunged like restless spirits, and within the solar Sansa traced delicate paths across Bernard's downy scalp. The babe cooed, clutching her finger with surprising strength, and she smiled despite lips chapped by winter's lingering breath. Maester Crelin entered, bowing low, parchment in hand. "A raven, my lady, from Riverrun." Sansa thanked him, easing Bernard into his cradle of dark heart tree and gilded lion heads. The maester lingered, hesitant. She broke the seal, recognized her mother's careful script. Catelyn wrote of river ice thinning, of fish returning, of hope daring to bloom. Yet between lines laced a tension. Bolton gathering too many levies at the Dreadfort. Rumors that Carhold men answered his summons. Sansa's throat tightened. She folded the letter, slid it into her sleeve, dismissing the maester with a soft word before settling beside Bernard's cradle like a sentinel carved from snow and steel. When Tywin returned from council, crusted in travel dust after inspecting escarpments where new cliff defenses rose, he found her thus. She relayed Catelyn's warning in flute-quiet tones. Tywin's jaw flexed. "Roose tests the door," he muttered. "We shall reinforce the hinges." Plans spun behind his eyes. Additional grain wagons northward to sweeten loyalties. Letters summoning Lord Wyman Manderly to dine at Casterly Rock. Manderless despised Boltons. Within an hour ravens launched, wings knifing cold air. 3 days later, dawn revealed white sails on Lannisport's horizon. Ser Jaime rode hard to the docks. Sansa watched from battlements as banners snapped blue and silver. The Manderly trident wrapped in mermaid tail. Lord Wyman disembarked, cheeks ruddy, escorting a dozen knights and near 24 bakers, bearing sweet Frey pies to curry Lannister favor. But he bowed deepest to Lady Sansa, proclaiming delight at serving the lion wolf babe's wet nurse with proper northern fare. There, at the breakwater, an alliance sealed not with ink but with crusted goose and onions. Evenings swelled with strategy. Tywin and Sansa pored over Bolton movements, pushing wooden tokens across carved maps. Jaime contributed cavalry insights. Lord Wyman offered gossip gleaned from White Harbor merchantmen. Bolton correspondence with a Bravos Bank, coin changing hands for sellswords. Tyrion, perched on a high stool with wineskin dangling, suggested peppering Bolton lands with pardons for Karstark deserters, reclaiming lost men before Bolton could bind them. Sansa drafted the pardons in her own steady hand, sealing each with wax-stamped wolf over lion. The choice of sigil placement, wolf foremost, was deliberate. She felt Tywin's silent approval radiate across the table, like banked coals. When Bernard slept, Sansa walked spiraling corridors to the rocks gallery where tapestries glimmered under moonsilver. She paused at a panel depicting Lan, the clever courting a maiden of the frost fields. Twin cubs at their feet, fingers brushed cotton threads. She wondered if old chroniclers embroidered futures into weft and warp. An echo of footfall. Jaime approached, helm tucked beneath elbow. "Could swear that cub wears stark gray," he remarked. She chuckled, tension easing. "And the other gold." He extended a parcel bound in rough green linen. "A gift," he said. Inside lay a child's practice sword carved from oak, lion sigil burned into guard, direwolf etched along blade. "When Bernard's 4, Jaime added. "Best start early." Tears pricked Sansa's eyes. She thanked him with a nod too thick for words. Jaime bowed, golden hair catching torch glow like spun fire, then strode away humming a march. Winter's tail loosened, but claws remained. One black ice morning, a raven broke its neck against the rock's rookery walls, message still bound. The note smelled faintly of pine. Winterfell wax. Robb script. Hurried. Bolton forces muster at the Barrowlands. Karstark banners seen among them. Rumors Ramsay leads covert raids upon mountain clans. Robb requested immediate reinforcement of road garrisons before snows melted completely. Tywin's response burned across parchment. Sir Kevin to ride with 200 heavy horse east to Maidenpool. Load ships north, Lannisport's smiths to forge iron spikes for road defenses. Gold advanced to Manderley's for additional cell sales patrolling White Harbor. Sansa penned a second letter, all warmth for Robb, promising hope and strength. Preparations fevered the rock like midsummer forge. Crates of barbed caltrops rattled through courtyards, stacked beside casks of garum and Myrish fine oil bound for northern trade. Amid this bustle, Bernard cut first teeth. Pearlish nubs revealed by pained cries. Sansa rocked him sleepless nights, mingling northern lullaby with Dornish melody Tyrion had taught her. Tywin, awake beyond midnight quill scratching, paused to stand in doorway watching mother and child, locked in lamplight hush. Something melted in his gaze, a hush older than war. The convoy departed under banners braided crimson and gray. Sansa stood at parapet, Bernard swaddled against her chest, as Tywin led the vanguard, still lord of Casterly Rock yet father now thrice tempered. He promised swift return by turning his helm toward her, lifting visor in salute before urging his destrier down the winding road. Hooves striking sparks. Jaime rode flanking, gold cloak billowing. Lord Wyman's stout figure bounced on a palfrey deeper in column, reciting feast recipes to a scribe. Wagons groaned with grain, iron, olive oil, gifts and gambits both. Days curved into hush. Without Tywin's stern rhythm, the fortress breathed slower. Sansa assumed morning councils, surprising gray-haired stewards with command crisp as frostbite. She inspected garrisons, arranged midwifely herbs for miners' wives, refashioned the great hall's fireplace mantels with carved barrow wolves, gifted by Manderley artisans. Subtle signal northern culture sat at Lion's hearth. Courtiers whispered of young lioness, as though a legend quickening in stone. In King's Landing, Cersei's patience frayed. Reports of Bolton rising set her pacing silk-strewn chambers. She summoned Qyburn. Whisper into Bolton's ear, she ordered, eyes blade bright. Tell him golden titles await if he claws the lion's new whelp. Qyburn bowed, smile thin as dissecting knife. Ravens took flight that night, bearing coded promises. Somewhere in the frostfields, Roose Bolton unfolded the scrap beneath flickering candles. Expression unreadable as sheeted ice. As spring crest approached, a second raven, signature unfamiliar, arrived for Sansa Decor. Wax imprinted by a flayed man. She opened it in private, pulse quick. Inside, elegant script. Your peace floats upon winter's river. Ice cracks when weight shifts. No name, no demand. A warning or threat. She carried it to the solar where Tyrion lounged reviewing import duties. He read, whistled low. Bolton's subtle as a butcher, he quipped. Then sobered. We must answer. Together they drafted response not to Roose, but to every northern bannerman. Proclamations of forthcoming council at Winterfell, to ratify Bernard's right as peaceborn. Copies stamped with Lionwolf seal, dispatched by fast courier. Message clear. Challenge 1. Face all. Tywin's force pressed the neck, crossing Drawbridge Causeway where fog coiled like serpents. Scouts reported Bolton host, massing near Barrowton. Numbers large but disciplined. Tywin established rally ground on Flint's Finger Ridge. Jaime paced vantage lines, evaluating archery ranges. At sunset, banners of stag skull interwoven with flayed man crested horizon. Karstark icon quartered with Bolton. Lord Locke of Oldcastle approached under parley, flag, Dachi. His words carried grudging respect. Bolton sought audience next dusk. Tywin agreed, dispatching Raven to Sansa. Negotiations imminent. Hold rock. Trust no letter but mine. Naisim. That night campfires stippled valley like molten coins spilled from sky. Inside command, tent Tywin, studied Bolton reports. Kevin predicted stalemate. Jaime preferred decisive strike. Manderley advocated defensive entrenchment. Tywin listened, then dismissed all save Jaime. Bolton barters fear, he said. We shall barter certainty. He penned a note to Roose. Propose marriage of Ramsay to a lesser Lannister cousin, dowry including Crownlands tract. If Bolton swears fealty to Bernard and aids rooting Ironborn. Offer deliberately generous. quell rebellion with silk rather than sword, yet brandish blade behind promise. At Parley Field next dusk, Tywin waited in crimson cloak-lined ermine, helm resting on saddle. Roose Bolton approached, draped in pale leathers, dyed rose-pink. Eyes met, ice and ember. Tywin extended scroll. Roose unrolled, expression barely twitching at dowry terms. Silence lengthened until wind soughed through tall grass. At last Roose spoke, voice so soft Tywin leaned forward. "Your grandson's claim inspires admiration," he said. "Yet, northern blood remembers betrayals older than Hall's." Tywin's reply cut like whetted steel. "Remembrance is strength. It need not be shackle. Join us and you will sit as warden of the north beneath a peace none shall break. Refuse, and you stand alone between lion and wolf." Roose's gaze dipped to valley, where Manderley banners fluttered, where Karstark's sigils on his own flank wavered uncertain. He folded scroll. "I shall send answer by dawn." Dawn bled across dew-coated fields. A single raven launched from Bolton camp, bearing note. Roose accepts marriage pact, demands hostages as guarantee. Tywin counter-offered reciprocal hostages. Bolton nephew fostered at Casterly Rock. Young Lannister at Dreadfort. Unspoken threat disguised as trust. Terms hammered, scrolls sealed. Before Bolton's withdrew, Ramsay himself trotted circles in ringmail of flayed flesh motif, glaring across lines at Jaime. The Kingslayer's smile remained calm, but hand flexed on sword hilt as if itching to teach courtesy. Tywin nudged horses' reins. Time for departure north. News of accord preceded Tywin to Winterfell like warm wind. Before Thor.Olye, Robb greeted him at gate, flanked by Mormont guard. Exchanges stiff but civil, Robb honoring Lion who aided north yet still father of enemy queen. In great hall below weather-scoured grey beams, Tywin ratified pact before assembled bannermen. Roose knelt, Ramsay beside, whispers swirling of bastard's cruelty. Tywin's voice thundered, "Let this kneeling bind north and westerlands, strength joined not by blood spilt, but by blood shared." He raised Ramsay's chin. "Guard your wife well when union sealed." Unease flickered behind Ramsay's pale eyes. Meanwhile, at Casterly Rock, Sansa prepared for journey. She chose guards loyal to Stark and Lannister both. Tyrion accompanied, as did Septa, wet nurse, and crates of ledgers. Not even Mother's pilgrimage paused the accounts. At dawn, gulls wheeled above harbor while ships cast lines. Flagship Winter's gold-bearing direwolf prow gilded. Bennard gurgled at spray, clutching carved lion-wolf toy. Voyage north carved slow crescents along coast. Tyrion recounted ribald sailing tales. Sansa laughed, buoyed by salt and possibility. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman hosted feast of cod chowder, thick as cream. Pronouncing Bennard the little reconciler. Fishermen lined quays to witness woman who wove peace, and children cheered at glimpse of cub. The party rode inland past barrow mounds where ancient kings slept. Sansa felt whispers in Barrowwind, promise that Old North watched her steps. Approaching Winterfell, fields blushed with newborn grass. Smoke rose from chimneys rebuilt with Lannister coin. Wolves howled welcome from woods. Gate creaked open. Catelyn rushed forth, tears silvering cheeks as she swept daughter and grandson into arms. "You brought spring," she whispered. Sansa inhaled scents of pine, hearth ash. "Mother Datat." Robb emerged, taller than memory, grey wind circling Bennard, sniffing, then licking tiny cheek. Hushed all. That night a feast thrummed inside repaired hall. Stag pie, honeyed oatcakes, barrels of northern ale. Bards sang of lion and wolf cub. Robb toasted Tywin absentee for honoring promise, a gesture earning raised brows but acceptance. Near midnight, Catelyn guided Sansa beneath Hearttree, where red leaves rustled. Candles flickered in snowmelt pools. Mother and daughter knelt. "The gods kept you," Catelyn murmured. Sansa touched carved face. Sap oozed fresh. She thanked old gods and new for unlikely journey. In days following, Northern Council convened. Lords Glover, Mormont, Reed, Umber gathered. Tywin, arriving by road, strode into chamber clad in subdued gray cloak trimmed red, sign of respect. Debate raged. Karstark heirs petitioned absolution. Umbers demanded reparations for burned fields. Tywin listened, occasionally consulting Sansa Da'ar. She spoke softly but firmly. Farmland grants. Remission of southern tithes for a year. Charter to create joint Wolf-Lion Guard patrolling King's Road. Even grizzled Greyjohn paused, nodding approval. Vote unanimous. Bennard named Prince of Winterfell, and heir of Casterly Rock contingent on future siblings. Roose Bolton confirmed warden, but oath sworn to council oversight. Sansa exhaled, sensing century-old fracturing knit, if not seamless, at least taut. Among celebrations, Sansa wandered Godswood dusk. Tywin followed, boots crunching snow patches. At Blackpool he halted. "Your realm now," he said. She shook head. "Ours." He reached for her hand. "You have accomplished what kings failed." She smiled. "We've only begun." Branches overhead sighed agreement. As stars pricked velvet, they pledged cradle-born future beyond banners. Yet in shadows of distant cities, disturbance brewed. Across the sea, sellsword captains dismissed by Bolton found new patron. Cersei, pocketing allies for chapters unwritten. In Korth, a warlock watched red comet fragments still streak dusky, whispering of king's blood north and lion's roar west. And far south, on Dragonstone cliffs, Melisandre dreamed of child, with wolf's eyes and lion mane, forging blade of sunrise. Fires whispered, and she summoned ravens of her own. Back at Winterfell, Bennard took first steps on Stone Yard, chasing sunbeam while gray wind patted centuries-worn flagstones alongside. Sansa clapped. Tywin allowed himself rare laugh. Robb witnessed, hope easing scars. Yet ravens arrived. Balon Greyjoy dead. Euron crowned promising to tame krakens with sorcery. Dornish envoys reported Volantene triarchs amassing fleet. Realm's peace, a glass shield under hammer wind. Tywin convened war council in Winterfell's solar, lit by flicker flame. Maps sprawled, pins marking coasts. He spoke of preemptive diplomacy. Building northern fleet at White Harbor. Garrison at Moat Cailin. Sansa added suggestion. Recruit mountain clan warriors with guarantee of trade routes. Tyrion proposed alliance marriage between Dornish princess and Tommen to balance Lannister influence. Robb weighed each, nodded. One icy morning, Tywin fell ill. Fever burning behind eyes like forge bellows. Maester Luwin bled him, applied willow tea. Sickness lingered, sapping iron from step. Sansa remained bedside, reading ledger updates aloud, grounding him in work he loved. Between shivers, he gripped her hand. "Should I fall?" he rasped. "Guide Bennard. Do not let realm fracture." Tears blurred her reading, but she steadied voice. Fever broke after 4 days. Tywin rose, leaner yet steeled and new. When spring burgeoned fully, a procession departed Winterfell. Sansa, Tywin, Bennard, Robb, Catelyn, lords north and west, bound for King's Landing to present the Peace Cup before Iron Throne. On road crowds gathered, marveling at union impossible months prior. Poets coined phrase. Lions thaw. Minstrels sang a Bennard the Bridge. Each league layered myth. Approaching capital, banners lined causeway. Baratheon stag, crown lion, direwolf entwined. Cersei greeted party atop stairs of Red Keep. Smile frost, sharp. Tommen stood small by her side, eyes wide. Sansa stepped forward, Bennard in arms. Tommen leaned, awe bright. Cersei's gaze flickered, calculations swirling like viper coil. Tywin knelt, surprising assembly. He lifted Tommen's hand to Bennard's, binding cousins. Applause rippled, except from spider-webbed corners where Varys studied alignment of stars not yet visible. Inside throne room, Iron Throne loomed viscous and jagged. Tommen ascended, High Septon at side. Tywin and Sansa approached dais. Presented Bennard. High Septon placed small blessing upon child. Let peace where iron and mercy wield flame, Court erupted in cheers, though Cersei's nails dug red crescents into palm. Feasts spanned 3 nights. On second eve, Qyburn whispered to Cersei. Attempt against Bernard planned by disgruntled Stormlander Sellswords bribed by Ironborn coin. Cersei weighed. Warn father and rival or allow chaos swallowing peace. Mother's instinct warred with ambition. At last, she dispatched silent sisters to intercept assassins. In shadowed corridor, blades flashed. Sansa, nursing Bernard, heard distant clamor, but remained untouched. Next morning, Tywin addressed court, commending Queen Mother's vigilance. Cersei accepted praise with brittle poise. Weeks wore on. Alliances set like cooling steel. Dornish embassy arrived with gift of golden sand steed for Bernard. Tyrell roses fluttered token sheets of trade entitlement. Even Greyjoy envoy offered pearl-inlaid kraken effigy, sign of new ruler's desire for legitimization. Under chandelier's blaze, Sansa navigated compliments and pitfalls, memory of King's Landing cruelties distant yet vivid. She refused wine from cups she did not pour. Kept Bernard close, dagger ever sheathed but near. One afternoon, while sun slanted through high windows dust-moted, she wandered gardens once tended by traitorous Pycelle. There among lemon trees she encountered Cersei alone. Silence taut as bowstring. At last Cersei spoke, voice low. You've caged the realm with ribbons. Sansa met her gaze. Ribbons fray, we mend when they do. Cersei's green eyes simmered. Beware the day they snap. Sansa nodded, not in fear but understanding. I plan to tie new ones before that day. Departure from capital preceded summer's first scorch. As retinue wound west, Sansa pondered seeds planted, Bolton restrained, Greyjoy wariness, Tyrell goodwill in check by northern trade. Yet darker currents stirred. In Pentos, a young sell-sale named Harry Strickland accepted secret contract signed by faceless benefactor bearing crowned lion seal. Task: recover dragon eggs rumored hidden in ruins of Valyria and transport to Westeros. If hatched, dragons obey no banners. Back at Casterly Rock, Tywin and Sansa resumed governance. Bernard toddled corridors under watch of both Lannister guards and northern hounds gifted by Robb. Scrolls arrived weekly. Roose fulfilling tribute. Ramsay wed to Joy Hill under uneasy truce. Manderley shipwrights launching 5th Man-o'-War for Northern Fleet. Realm exhaled. One cool midnight, Sansa stood on balcony overlooking sea. Tywin joined, cloaked in wolf trim. Moon shimmered trail across waves. She spoke of dreams, establishing school where northern and western children exchanged lore, a festival celebrating harvests from both territories, of codifying council structure to endure beyond their rule. Tywin listened, lines around mouth softening. Legacy, he murmured, greater than gold. He rested hand atop hers on balustrade. Together then, she leaned into his warmth. Together. Bon wine shall. In distant dawn, still unrisen, war drums may yet thunder. Intrigues coil like silent vipers, and prophecies murmur of winter and fire. But here, under patient stars, lion and wolf watched their cubs sleep, hearts unexpectedly sensed to hush of surf and promise of morrow, forged by will, tempered by love, and guarded by vigilance unblinking. And the wind whispered through high ramparts of Casterly Rock, a lullaby older than crowns. Stone endures, wood sprouts anew, and hope, like gold, gleams brightest when pulled from deepest dark.